Hey there, welcome back to my channel, Jeff's Cave of Cool Books. So far in my videos I've talked about fiction, fantasy, science fiction, horror, pulp adventure, that kind of thing. But today I want to talk about some books related to another big love of mine, another big hobby of mine, which is films and television. Ever since I can remember, I've been a big fan, a lover of movies and TV shows, especially dramas, TV dramas, and I continue to be so today. And that's one of my other big loves. And that means that a lot of my books, or I should say I have a lot of books about those topics, okay? And one of the ones I want to talk about today, it's another in my probably very short series of bookshelf treasures, books that have some value either from history or memory linked to them, or their rarity. In this case, it's a fairly rare book, I guess, fairly valuable now, and that is related to film. And it's massive. It's probably the biggest book that I own at a whopping 12 pounds, 5.4 kilograms. Ugh, get your workout lifting this thing. Mario Bava, All the Colors of the Dark by Tim Lucas. Now, I'm going to get back to looking inside this thing shortly, but it's pretty heavy, so I'm going to put it down right now. Now, the writer of this, Tim Lucas, some of you who are movie fans might be aware. If you ever watch DVDs or Blu-rays, Tim Lucas has done several commentary tracks for various films and television series. He is also perhaps most well known for creating and running a long-running magazine about cult cinema called Video Watchdog. He also has his website, Video Watch Blog, spun off of that. Now, Video Watchdog, I have a box full of almost all of the 175 issues of that magazine. I had back-ordered some. I bought a lot in the stores when you could go in and buy a copy every month or every 2 months, whenever, depending on its publication schedule over the years, in a Barnes & Noble or Borders Books and the like. But sadly, that went out of, that ceased publication several years back. I think you can find quite a few of them still online or in ebook form. But while that was going, that was a self-published magazine and had a lot of contributing writers. Tim Lucas himself contributed a lot. He looked basically the watchdog part, Video Watchdog. It stemmed from the video and VHS and Laserdisc days through DVD into Blu-ray. I think it folded up before 4K started. Pretty sure about that. Anyway, Tim Lucas's mindset was looking at these kind of lesser known or cult or eclectic films. He covered all sorts of genres, but particularly with the focus on horror and science fiction films and television shows. And he would go into, and his other stable of writers would go into minute detail comparing versions. Maybe they were previously cropped, or they were, the picture was not in the right aspect ratio, or there were scenes that had been cut out and maybe were put back in later editions. Anyway, very interesting magazine. And Tim Lucas's wife, Donna Lucas, the late Donna Lucas, she sadly passed away a few years ago suddenly, to everyone's great regret, that knew her. She was the design genius that put together the magazine, and they had self-published that from their base in Cincinnati, Ohio. And Donna also helped design and put together this book. Now, this is a labor of love. Mario Bava, All the Colors of the Dark. It was a labor of love that Tim Lucas worked on for years. And it's massive. So it came out in 2007 after several years of work. It has an introduction by Martin Scorsese, and a foreword by Ricardo Frida. And it's not just about the filmmaker, Mario Bava, who started off as a cameraman. He was also a director and assistant director earlier in his career, and went on to direct several noteworthy films, such as Danger Diabolique or Planet of the Vampires, Kill Baby Kill, and many others that I can't think of off the top of my head. He was a very busy man. He worked in many different fields, many different subgenres. But this book is not just about his life, Bava's life and work, which of course it is, but it's Tim Lucas goes into so much exhaustive detail. This acts as a real primer on the Italian film industry overall. All the famous subgenres like spaghetti westerns, Bava worked in those, sword and sandal, peplum films like the Hercules and Maciste films, etc., Samson, those are covered. The Italian horror films, Gialli or Giallo, you know, the based off of the yellow books, the kind of crime and serial killer type of films. Bava worked in all of those different those different genres and subgenres, and throughout the 50s up through the 80s. And Tim Lucas covers all those different fields and all the other ancillary players, producers, writers, actors, etc. in terrific detail. And it's very fascinating. And it's a beautiful book full of posters, full of photos that took a long time to compile, I'm sure, and took his wife, Donna, hours and hours and hours and endless hours to format properly. So I want to give you a little look at this book. It's pretty hard to get a hold of now for anything resembling a decent price. When I bought it, I believe I paid about $150, $160 for it, which seems like a lot of money. But you know, I knew this was going to be worth something and be very valuable over time, and that's proven to be so as it's gone out of print. I've found some copies on eBay for about $1,000. On Amazon Marketplace, they go for around $2,000. So it's of course those are overly inflated prices, but pretty hard to get your hands on them. I don't know anything about an ebook version. I don't believe there is one, but it's a splendid looking book, a beautiful book, and the content is also great. So let me take a little closer look inside. Okay, guys, this is going to be a little awkward because it's a very big book. So let's try to go through this. But I want to show you a little bit of the inside to show you how much, basically on every other page, there's something nice to look at. If you notice, if I take the slipcover off, and you can see the hardback, it's got a nice mask design there. I'll show the side a little later. Or I'll try to do it now. It has the lettering here, right? Oh, it's so heavy. Okay. Oh, here we go. Oh, it's a terrible thing. Okay. That's the one downside to this book. It's beautiful, but it's too big. It's just too big. Okay. So there we go. We have the first page with the signature of Mario Bava, all the colors of the dark. Again, you'll see the video watchdog kind of publication there, based in Cincinnati, Ohio. That's where Tim Lucas lived and still lives, and where they published their magazine, Video Watchdog, and where they published this book. Of course, it wasn't printed by them, but they did all the layout, etc. there, sent it to the printers, made a limited number of these. Okay, we have a nice dedication in memory of my Bava squad, people who helped him, who maybe were no longer there by the time the book was published. Here is, I believe, a picture from, is this Black Sunday, perhaps? Okay. Again, there's many photos, obviously. Impressive table of contents. Ricardo Freda, filmmaker himself there, who wrote the introduction long time ago, right? 1984 is when he wrote it. This was a long gestating project for Tim Lucas, obviously. Martin Scorsese, champion of film, classic film, cult film, all his life, as well as a famous director of his own, of note himself. And again, talking about this book, the introduction. And we have a prologue, and here is Mario Bava himself, working his magic. Bava was known for being very creative on limited means. A lot of Italian films were low budget, but Bava's films were usually a cut above in their look, visual style, use of color and color gels and color lighting. So again, going through some of his films. Knives of the Avenger is one. Or Eric the Viking, etc. here. So you can see lots and lots of dense text, right? Lovely poster art. Right, moon and dolls. Every page has something, or every 2-page spread. And this paper is slick magazine style paper, like the magazine Video Watchdog itself was published on. Quante volte quelle notte. Looks like a Kill Baby Kill, Japanese poster for Bava's Kill Baby Kill, kind of a European ghost story, very interesting. His films are always very visual. So father and son, talking about Bava's father. Sorry, there we got a little, I don't even know what, maybe that's the packing note of when I received this package from years ago. Eugenio Bava, the invisible man of Italian cinema, and of course, Mario Bava was his son and entered into the field. So we start way back in the history. I'm going to skip forward a little bit until we get, because there's a lot talking about early Italian films in the 40s and 50s, the post-war era, some black and white pictures and family photos and very interesting things. But when we start to get into what Bava's working on himself, his time as a cameraman, right? In some black and white films in Italy. Again, Italy always being a European country, they're a little more salacious, a little more sexual in their films. So you'll see some little more risque shots here and there, perhaps. Okay. Now, melodrama, myth, and history. Getting into some of his work in historical epics. Yes, he worked on a version of Spartacus, not the actual Spartacus, I don't believe. But anyway, getting into, going through some of his earlier work. Let's pop forward a little bit into where he starts to enter into his own right as a director, right? He did some Hercules films. Now, again, Tim Lucas doesn't just talk about Bava's Hercules movies. Bava directed Hercules in the Haunted World, which also co-starred, I believe it co-starred Reg Park as Hercules, but it starred Christopher Lee as well as the villain in it. But it gives a background of all these different kinds of Hercules movies. There's Steve Reeves swanning it around in Italy with his co-stars. And then sometimes Bava working behind the scenes there. Again, just an overview of all these great Peplum and Hercules and early science fiction movies. Right? I'm talking about the actual movies that he eventually works on. Hercules Unchained. And then getting into some other works. Kaltiki, The Immortal Monster. Again, just tons of great posters and production photos, etc. Black Sunday, starring Barbara Steele, very famous horror film, black and white horror film from Bava. There's this famous poster which took, of course, the image on the cover, the slipcover of the book. And again, details, very detailed interviews of many people who worked with Bava, worked on the various film projects. Lots of photos of the lovely Barbara Steele, who is the main character and femme fatale in this movie. Basically, she's put in the Iron Maiden, and this is her face afterwards. She was cursed as a witch, and the mask, obviously, not the Iron Maiden completely, but the terrible mask there. And then we're in the early 60s now. Morgan the Pirate, again with Steve Reeves, very handsome early bodybuilder turned actor Steve Reeves. All right, we got some more biblical epics that he worked on. The Giant of Thessaly. There's Cameron Mitchell there. Again, I don't want to spend too much time on all of this stuff, but he's working in these kind of peplum films and other films, but he's going to be moving into more other genres before too long, into straight up horror eventually. And Bava's noted for interesting visual effects, color schemes of things. Hercules in the Haunted World. Now we're getting into his own Hercules epic. Eric of the Vikings. With Cameron Mitchell. There's Bava clowning around in the background, or a production behind the scenes photo. Again, Italian films famous for their extremely beautiful actresses. Anyone who's aware of Claudia Cardinale and Sophia Loren can attest to that. We're still kind of in the machiste and the swordsman and Viking periods, sword and sandal movies. Beautiful 2-page spread there. Starting to get into some crime and suspense films. Right? But not completely leaving the knights and monsters, etc. Black Sabbath, which was a kind of portmanteau or anthology film with 3 different stories in it, I believe, plus perhaps a book-ending story. Boris Karloff appeared in all 3 of the stories, I believe, or at least he appeared as a perhaps host in a couple of them, and then he's the Vertilac, the vampire creature in the last story. That's one of Bava's early horror masterpieces there. Again, lots of profiles of actors and posters. The Whip in the Body with Christopher Lee, and I believe, what was the actress's name? I can't think of her name right now. Israeli actress, but her name is escaping me at the moment. Anyway, not important. Very beautiful though. And again, some masked horror, assassin type films. You'll see later Bava got into, here's a spread from, I believe, Planet of the Vampires, getting into some space opera, as well as some early spaghetti westerns. Arizona Bill. Right? Planet of the Vampires. You can see the creative lighting. This movie is believed to have been a very big influence on Ridley Scott, some of the designers who worked on the original Alien, including finding a giant skeleton of a giant alien on board a derelict spaceship. This is quite an interesting movie. If you like kind of classic B 60s science fiction horror movies. And then here we have a Ringo, Savage Gringo. We're getting into spaghetti westerns. As I said, Mario Bava did it all pretty much. He did all kinds of things. He's back to the Vikings here with Knives of the Avenger. I actually have this movie on DVD. I have several Bava movies on DVD. And this is quite a good film, actually. We have an image of Italian films being cheesy with their, the dubbing and the off-lip movements, etc. But the best ones, like, for example, Sergio Leone's famous spaghetti westerns with Clint Eastwood, are something special. Here's Kill, Baby, Kill. Famous ghost story. This very influential if you've ever seen a movie with a little girl and a bouncing ball down the stairs, ghostly apparitions. This is where it first popped up in film, at least as far as I've been able to tell. There she is holding her ball right there. Some kind of U.S. ballyhoo, trying to get audiences into theater. Now, he directed this pretty terrible... there were 2 Dr. Goldfoot movies made in the 60s, kind of spy spoofs, starring Vincent Price. Dr. Goldfoot and the Girl Bombs was the second one, and is considered to be pretty bad, but Vincent Price's camping it up is always worth some fun. And of course, there are the girl bombs in question. There's no doubt there is plenty of bombshells on display in this movie. But it stars a couple of what many critics call fairly unfunny Italian comics, at least unfunny outside of Italy. the young, the evil, and the savage. Okay, we're getting into some kind of gialli and thrillers, right? I'll try to move along a little bit. Oh, here we go. Now we're getting into him working with Roger Vadim on Barbarella with Jane Fonda and John Philip Law, and that's where he encountered John Philip Law to cast him in Danger Diabolique, which is a fantastic spy thriller caper movie based off of a kind of famous comic. The iconic scene of Diabolique and his girlfriend, his partner in crime, rolling around in a bed of money in Diabolique's headquarters. Great Ennio Morricone score on this one. The lovely Marisa Mell tragically died young, and there's John Philip Law, who also played Sinbad in the movie later for Ray Harryhausen. Diabolique, kind of master thief criminal character. It's a very fun movie. Here he is all made up with his mask. It's got great car chases. And again, this is a use of special effects and simple camera techniques to make this movie look a lot more expensive than it has any right to be. There's a great poster, right? I'm losing my support of this thing. Oh, there we go. Can you still see? Okay. And then we're getting into a Pisto for Ringo. So here's some more spaghetti westerns. Il Pistolero, Signata da Dio. The Adventures of Ulysses. So starting to work with Dino De Laurentiis. We're getting into the mid to later 60s here. So he's going back to some more historical epics. And then Bava kind of goes full-fledged into horror movies. Hatchet for the Honeymoon. Real kind of horror thriller. Who's killing off all these different people at this lakeside resort. Starting to get pretty violent here. European code being a little, or European censors being a little less strict in Hollywood. 4 Times That Night. Another jolly, there's a lovely picture of Bava with one of his main stars there. And again, as you can see, just Lucas and his wife don't let any page go by without, or 2-page fold without giving something to look at besides text. $5 for an August Moon. You're getting into those kind of cool, crazy titles of jolly. Again, lots of sexy girls and danger and masked killers. Okay, let's skip forward a little bit. Roy Colt and Winchester Jack, another spaghetti western. Let's see. There's a nice poster of Roy Colt and Winchester Jack. Some posters from all around the world. Twitch of the Death Nerve. There's a pretty savage looking poster image there. Ecologia de Delito. Okay. My Italian pronunciation, I'm sure, is awful. Anyway, you can see kind of little precursor perhaps to the Hollywood slasher films that proliferated in the 80s, a decade or so later. Getting into Baron Blood, a more gothic horror with Joseph Cotton playing Baron Blood. And I believe Elke Summer is the actress in this one, but I may be mistaken. Yeah, it looks like Elke Summer there. Elke Summer, German actress, very popular in Hollywood productions as well as European productions at that time. There she is, looking pretty stylish there. Also, different titles, Baron, Vampire. Lisa and the Devil. One of his more well-known films there. I forgot who the actress, yeah, it's Elke Summer again, comes back in this one. But with slightly different hairstyle. There she is there, talking with Telly Savalas. And getting a little older Mario Bava there. Okay, let's skip forward a little bit. The House of Exorcism. So again, Exorcist. Italian cinema was always quick to cash in on a new trend. They were never first, but they were quick to copy, whether it was the zombie movies of the 80s or the Exorcist, right? In the 70s, they were always quick to copy. Rabid Dogs. Now, this is a nasty piece of work about a couple of criminals that kidnap some people, carjack, basically. And that's a pretty hardcore horror flick, not to my taste particularly. Bava was getting a little harder edged as the trends went that way. I believe he's getting into some biblical epics. Moses the Lawgiver. What is that? Looks kind of like Burt Lancaster, but yeah, I think it might be Burt Lancaster playing that. Beyond the Door 2, again, getting more into the splattery, shock, horror realm. Again, not all of these films or genres are my huge favorites, but the sheer diversity of films and genres and the history of the Italian film industry and all the details make this fascinating reading for a movie buff such as myself. Okay, now we're up to page 1000, so it's getting towards the end of his life. He worked a bit on Inferno, which was a Dario Argento film. That's why it's called Mario Bava's secret filmography, movies he worked on that perhaps weren't well known that he did. His Last Days, a very moody picture, photo of him, and some of his last projects, like Macabre, etc. Some, talking about his family, some storyboards, and script pages, etc. Filmography, all sorts of massive amounts of acknowledgments and bibliography, etc. Right? Lots of people who are patrons of this work that put up some money before, like the early version of Kickstarter, perhaps, and an index. And so at the end of the index, we're at page 1106, and then a name index. If you count all the indexes, etc., we're at 1,125 pages. And then we have the same kind of end papers, and there's a picture of Mr. Lucas right there. He's a little bit older now, but he's a prolific contributor on Facebook, on his Facebook page. And again, lovely hardbound copy, high glossy magazine pages. And while it's a bit heavy, even for someone like me who hits the gym pretty regularly, it's a pretty worthy tome. I had some friends or forum members on some forums in the past where I posted a profile photo of myself sitting on the sofa holding this book on my lap, and many of those friends made cracks about, don't keep that on your lap very long, you might not have kids in the future. That's how heavy it is. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that look into this book, Mario Bava, All the Colors of the Dark. If you're interested in Italian cinema, or if you're interested in cult films or books about film, it's quite a worthy tome, and it really deserves the word tome. Anyway, take care. Until the next time, we'll talk to you later.